and welcome to another episode of Flute Tube. Today we're going to talk about the element of time for musicians. And of course, this is a topic that we have addressed already in a lot of different episodes. I'll put a link to those up here. All musicians have to think and talk a lot about time. Mostly we talk about how best we can be in control of keeping time. And when we talk about that, we often refer to our best friend, the metronome, and how it can help us keep time better. Today, though, I'm going to talk about an entirely different aspect of time, how we face this aspect of time, and how it can improve what we do as musicians, especially when we're in pressure situations like auditions, competitions, or generally in performance. I want to talk about how this aspect of time can really serve us well and work in our favor. I imagine that you have experienced at least one instance in your life and probably multiple instances where you have felt distinctly that time seemed to slow down. That is the big aspect of time that we're going to address today. One of those instances for me where I felt that suddenly time moved noticeably slower than usual was when I was in a car accident. I was a passenger in the front seat next to the driver, and the driver of that car was attempting to parallel park on a very steep hill in New York City. She had just moved to New York from Pakistan. Her dad had just gifted her a car, and a passenger in the back seat said to her as she was pulling up and down this hill working on parallel parking, "You're handling this really well." Well, I think that actually put a little pressure on the driver, and as she was moving forward towards the car in front of her where she was trying to parallel park, I saw her slam on the gas rather than the brake and just kind of panic. The car was a big car. It went up on top of the little car in front of her, ran into the scaffolding that was attached to the apartment building to my right side, and we were stuck there on the top of that car. They actually evacuated that building, and our accident was bad enough that they showed it on the news. Luckily, no one was hurt, but for me, during that accident, I just felt that I was aware of every millisecond. And actually, I would have guessed the opposite would happen. I would have thought it would all become a big blur because it happened within the course of seconds. But in fact, my awareness was heightened, and I noticed a lot more than I normally would in the course of a few seconds. If you've ever had an experience like that, I'd like to know what it was that brought you to that state of heightened awareness. If you feel comfortable leaving a comment, I would like to know what kinds of situations you've faced that have made you feel like that. I have an adult flute student who's also an ER nurse professionally, and she told me in a lesson when we were discussing this that exactly the same thing happens to her when she's working in the ER regularly. Someone will come in with an emergency situation, and she said that rather than feeling that everything becomes too stressful and everything becomes a blur, she feels that she actually gains clarity and time slows down so that she can notice a lot more every little detail and think through what needs to happen, so that she is made more capable of helping a patient who's in critical need of help. I know the situations I've described so far involve adrenaline, and that means that they involve our fight or flight instincts. If you're in flight mode but trapped in an uncomfortable situation, perhaps things do become a blur while you try to just get through it and be done with it. But if you enter fight mode and you want to conquer this situation and do the very best you can with it, you have this perception that time slows down and you have extra ability to deal with things. You're able to do everything that you need to engage with the situation, make it better, and see it through. Adrenaline helps us gain extra awareness and become very alert. When you are in a high pressure situation, if you're performing in any situation that makes you feel at all stressed, use the adrenaline to your advantage. It really can make your performance better. If you can enter fight mode, not let yourself go into flight mode, you can use it as a tool to really conquer the situation. That heightened awareness and feeling of extra energy and the sense that time has slowed down can give you tools and abilities that you don't have in your daily life. And in fact, I think that's one thing that performers are really drawn to. We feel this sense of extra power by virtue of the extra abilities that adrenaline gives us. And for many performers in many different areas, not even just musicians, but performing artists and athletes, it's a very powerful feeling to have that adrenaline behind what we're trying to do. However, we can and should make time slow down for us, not only when we have a lot of adrenaline, but really learning how to do that as a professional skill in our daily lives. The really important lesson or idea that I want musicians to take away from this episode today is that we can develop the skill of making time feel like it slows down for us on a regular basis. We can make this deep level of concentration and an ability to make time slow down become a professional skill for us as musicians that we can deploy at will. And in fact, musicians and other performing artists are definitely not the only people who can do this. As one very compelling example that I think illustrates what I'm talking about very well, let's talk about baseball players who can do the same thing. Since I'm such an expert on baseball, studies have shown that when professional baseball batters are at the plate getting ready to bat, they concentrate so hard that it is as if time slows down for them. Those watching in the stadium or on the television might see the baseball just zip towards the batter, and it's probably going 95 plus miles per hour, and then the batter strikes it and it zips away at probably 90 plus miles per hour. And from the viewer's perspective, whether you're in the stadium or watching from home, it seems to happen in a matter of instants. If you're in the audience, you might think, how could the batter have enough control to determine where the ball's gonna go and how he's gonna hit it when it all happens so fast? Sorry, I'm left-handed. But the batter, at the same time, feels that they see everything. They feel that they are in complete control. They have their eyes glued to the ball, and they feel that they see that ball coming at them. And this is why they've done studies and have found that, in fact, they're concentrating so hard that they do have an incredibly heightened sense of awareness compared to others who are passively watching, not in the action. If you think about it, musicians are constantly always dealing with very small split seconds. And when I say very small split seconds, I'm not being dramatic in any way. Think about fast runs that we play. We could easily have things happening constantly in 1/8 of a second. For instance, if you're playing a run where the quarter note is 120 and you're playing 16th notes, that's not even a crazy fast note value or tempo, you're playing 8 notes per second. For someone just listening, it may feel that those notes are so fast that they're kind of a blur. But if you're the one playing it, you know they should never be a blur. You should have your pulse on every little note and get it exactly in its place within that fraction of a second. And if you don't, you should. If you feel it's becoming a blur, you need to slow down, practice it slow, build up the speed very carefully, and feel that you have control of every split second. Stay in fight mode and take control of all those fast little notes. Don't go into flight mode. If you can slow time down like this, and I guarantee you, if you are a practicing musician, practicing hard enough to deal with these split seconds, you will become the kind of musical wizard who can slow down time. Then we can, no question, learn to control our runs and get them precise no matter how fast they are. This becomes an anti-rushing, anti-messy runs magic trick. If you think about keeping your eye glued to the ball and controlling every single little tiny fast note that you play, you will be the master of those notes. Or if you have a tiny little momentary lapse in a performance that to you will feel like it went on for minutes, but people in the audience really may not notice at all. We're all human and that happens sometimes, but you will be able to gain control again very quickly and move on just by keeping your eye glued to the ball of all those tiny little fast notes. So the conclusion and motivational thought for today is that if you make an absolute commitment to play each and every little tiny note and keep your eye glued to the ball as a musician, even though those tiny notes are only the merest fraction of a second, you will be able to make time slow down. If you practice accordingly, you will develop this musician sorcerer skill of being able to make time slow down.